So for the last 11 years, ASER has been reporting on the learning levels of 5 to 16-year-olds, right? And this year we decided to look at a slightly older age group for a variety of reasons. What can older children do? It is the first cohort of post-RTE children who are entitled to 8 years of schooling, right? So RTE came into effect in 2008, and this is 2018. We see this reflected in enrollment numbers as well. Enrollment in Standard 8 has doubled from 11 million in 2004 to 22 million in 2014. And this is an attempt to kind of shine the spotlight on these years. These years are very important years in the life of a young person, because these are the years that you transition from middle to secondary. If you drop out post 14 to in this age group, you're unlikely to go back to complete your education. Career choices are made in these years, and we know, given our system is not flexible, that you can go back, and not a lot of people go back to school. So there is this putty clay problem, right? All options should be open at this point, because once you've chosen an option, then it becomes clay, right? And you can't change that. And so we decided that this was an important age group to look at. We've done a lot of studies also, because as the government's attention is shifting to middle schooling and secondary schooling, what we saw in our research studies, we found that to scale it up in the ASER architecture, where it is done in households, where it is done by local volunteers, you want to involve local youth, so you need something which is easy to understand, easy to do, and therefore then easy to communicate, right? And what we found while we were piloting questions or from our research studies was that there was very, very little engagement with anything that looked academic. Kids' eyes just glaze over, it's all more of the same, right? And at the end of the day, like it was being discussed in the panel today, everybody has to do certain things in their lives. Meals have to be cooked and put on the table, and bills have to be paid, right? And so we decided to go with an assessment which was more functional than academic, right? And see whether young people could do things that they had to do on a daily basis. We are calling this a pilot. As far as ASER is concerned, the scale of ASER is concerned, this is truly 30,000. What our sample sizes have been in the past. And our hope is that it will start a national conversation. And like I said, this is one way of doing this. This is certainly not the only way of doing it. There are probably much better ways to but the idea was that we wanted to show a snapshot of a young person's life, right? Now, depending on what reaction we get, and yeah, you asked me about the challenges. I'll tell you the challenge. There are so many interesting things to know about these young people, and that's why we looked at these 4 domains. If you know, ASER is a fairly simple kind of a survey in terms of we don't collect too much information on many variables. Here we've got a whole lot of information. Now that becomes kind of difficult to do it in the ASER architecture. It takes much longer. You need certain, since you're talking to youth, you need more mature volunteers, if you will, right, to talk to this slightly older age group. So that was indeed a challenge, and we are actually very excited, because there also we got an amazing reaction, because what we did was we reached out to universities and colleges across the country, right, and specifically master's students, MSW colleges, and asked them to give us volunteers from their students. And the response was really, really good, and today in the afternoon we are sitting down with our partners. But again, it takes a lot of time. ASER usually takes 2 days in a village. This was taking 3 days. Because it's a longer assessment, even the training is longer. And that was a challenge, getting so much time from kids who are currently in college and taking them away. So let's see how this pans out, in the sense of, what is the reaction, what reaction. I certainly feel we'll do it again. I don't know whether it's going to be next year or after that, but let's see how this thing pans out.
So we've been doing this survey, annual status of education report for the age group of 6 to 14. That's because that was the age group fixed for the right to compulsory, free and compulsory education in India. And we did that for 10 years. But while we were doing that, we continuously felt that while the right to education was only up to 14 and working starts at 18, there was nothing for the 14 to 18 age group, and we needed to understand what was going on in that age group. Because clearly more and more children were coming out of the schools, more children being retained in the schools and so on, and yet their learning levels were low. So how does that affect children who have now finished their schooling up to the 8th grade and then gone beyond? That was something that we wanted to check. So we did, for I think a couple of years, we did some pilots to see what we could test other than what we normally did. I think we toyed around, experimented with various kinds of things, including skills on vocations and so on, but we didn't come up with a satisfactory measuring tool. So we've stuck with more or less pen and paper type of tools and reading comprehension numbers. And as panelists said today, that is a very fundamental skill of being able to read, write, comprehend, and analyze. So that is something that we've done this time, but I think over a period of time this tool will be sharpened, and it may probably expand as well into other things that we want to see whether the 14, 16-year-olds are learning or not. So we will continue to work on scale in the age group of 6 to 14. Even in that, we have been working large scale in the age group of 6 to 10 or 11. But now gradually we are making forays into the age group of 11 to 14 and possibly test something out in the 14 to 18 age group. But it's not something that we will probably do on a massive scale. At least doesn't seem like right now. At least from a kind of a piloting, testing point of view, some concepts that are coming up, including use of digital media in learning and so on, that we will at least try out in the next few years. And if those solutions come out successful, and if they are not expensive, if they can be real alternatives, then we will scale them.